Hello, my name is Dr. Star Matteson. I am an assistant professor in the CTE department at SUNY Oswego. I have an undergraduate and graduate degree in technology education and a terminal degree in higher education and adult learning. Today I'm going to provide you with some strategies to engage online high school students. As a high school technology and pre-engineering teacher for 20 years, I can quickly recognize the signs of the disengaged student. The chair slouch, the eyes half open, or refusing to make eye contact. Those signs let me know that I need to change my instructional strategy. I could change my pace of instruction, provide more meaningful examples, or move instruction to inquiry or teamwork to apply the information through the use of an activity. However, once we moved to online instruction, I was at a loss for how to monitor student engagement and best address my students' learning needs. How would I know if they really understood the concepts or were just completing the tasks that I provided them? Teaching remotely, I felt disconnected from my students, and I'm sure they felt the same way. This concern prompted exploration and research of options to increase synchronous and asynchronous student engagement in the learning process, which would ultimately increase their knowledge and understanding. The first thing that I had to do is figure out how to start building connections so that my students felt that they were still a part of the class, even though we were not physically in the classroom. As I started to explore the options available to determine what strategies might be effective, I found that meaningful experiences within a learning community could increase the likelihood of student understanding and aid in the retention of concepts within instructional tasks. So my first step was to figure out how to create that sense of community. How could I encourage my students to work together, to motivate each other, and to build understanding in a virtual environment? So how do we build connections and get our students to buy into the process? In a synchronous learning environment, through the use of Google Meet or Zoom, students have the opportunity to interact with each other and the instructor at predetermined dates and times. I was able to provide lessons, introduce activities, clarify instructions, share discussion prompts, and answer questions with the entire class, with small groups, or individual students. But the challenge was how to get students to buy into that process. How do I get them to turn the video on and actively participate? It's too easy for a high school student to just log on and keep the video off and go back to sleep. A few strategies that helped in my classroom to persuade students to turn on their video during Google Meets or Zoom was to show them how to use virtual backgrounds. This helped to increase the students' comfort level as the rest of the class could not see what their home environment looked like. Teaching in a high poverty area, this was an important detail for my students. For students who still did not feel comfortable keeping their video on through the duration of the meeting, I requested that they create an avatar or upload a picture and check in every 10 minutes, either by turning the video on briefly or promptly completing the checks for understanding that I posted as polls throughout the lesson. To keep students active in Google Meet or Zoom, especially those who chose to meet without the video feed, I posed questions that saw individual student input throughout the lesson. This strategy often prompted discussions in the chat feature. I discovered that asking open-ended questions and follow-up prompts were most successful. As you create your questions, make sure that they are meaningful to your topic and will elicit a multitude of responses. Students seem to enjoy the interactive nature of chat and poll features. This strategy both checked for student understanding and held students accountable to be both physically and mentally present. Breakout rooms are one of my favorite synchronous strategies. It's because they most closely resemble the classroom group project environment. During the large class meetings, students are placed in smaller groups to work on an activity which is due at the end of the session. As students are working, I can check in on each group and assess their progress and check for their understanding of the concepts. During the breakout activity time, students will think, pair, and then at the end of the breakout session, they will share and compare their ideas with the rest of the class using a shared Google Doc. I've also found that preparing a Google Doc for each team with some guided questions helps keep the group focused on completing the activity during the allotted time. There are a few ways to create breakout rooms in Google Meet. The first one is through the use of the Google Meet Chrome add-on, and the second is by setting up individual group meets and pasting them into a Google slide. Once you've created the slide, students can just click on the Google links to reach their breakout session. Be sure to have students mute their microphones on the large Meet prior to joining the breakout session. And you will find a step-by-step tutorial for this method at the bottom of the slide. With the entire nation experiencing the transition to online instruction, there are many emerging technologies and innovative ideas posted online daily. I try to limit myself to an hour each day to investigate the newest strategies and technologies available, determine if they'd engage or motivate my students, and how they can enhance instruction and retention. If your students are bored of polls and chats in their Google Meets, this blog has some innovative ideas to get your students to interact within your classroom. These ideas can be used in your synchronous classroom to increase your students' depth of knowledge, regardless of your content-specific area or grade level. With asynchronous learning, creating and retaining student engagement can be more challenging. Communication is definitely key. I have to explain to students that I can't see their faces as they work on assignments. I don't know if they're struggling. The only way that I will know that they need my help prior to submitting the assignment for a grade is that they communicate with me. Developing those lines of communication at the beginning of the course is extremely important. I let my students know that we're a team and we're working together to make sure that they understand the content, not only to pass the class, but to help them in the future. I communicate several examples of how the content they learn in class has long-term applications to their future careers. Since asynchronous learning can take place at any time throughout the day, I have students take ownership of their learning schedule by drafting their own learning agreement. In this agreement, students communicate specific times they plan to work on class assignments each day. I communicate my expectations, instructional support, and feedback they can expect to encounter as they work online. I provide information such as when work will be graded, response times to their emails, approximate time necessary to complete each assignment, and the communication protocol if they miss a due date. One important consideration in creating connections is effective feedback. The use of rubrics posted with assignment descriptions lets the students know the expectations for each assignment. When providing feedback, I've found that the use of video responses, in addition to rubrics, have helped students by increasing the clarity of feedback given. Students are able to see the instructor's facial expressions and hear their tone of voice. And this also creates a connection for the student that you're a real person and not just a name on their schedule. I also provide my students with multiple opportunities for improvement. Unfortunately, the learning environment is not a one-size-fits-all for student success. Just like the traditional classroom, a strategy that works for one student does not necessarily work for another. By providing students with multiple avenues to show their level of content knowledge, as well as resubmission opportunities to reflect and incorporate instructor feedback, students are able to learn and grow within the virtual classroom. To increase student accountability, I check in with each student during their specified work time to answer questions or provide feedback and encouragement. If the student's schedule is outside of the normal school day, I schedule an email to arrive during their identified work time, asking a specific question or a discussion prompt related to the course topic that they are required to answer that day. Students can also pose questions within the email. My response to student emails often include suggestions or questions to promote further thought. I have found that students respond well to words of encouragement within the emails, so I recognize something that they've done well before adding suggestions for improvement. Once students know that I check in regularly, this participation becomes more reliable. At the end of each module, I have my students provide a reflection of what they've learned. identify a connection between the current module and prior information learned in the course. Students identify what went well and what areas they struggled in. Not only does the reflection give students a chance to review and recall the events of the module, but it provides me with some valuable information to use as I update my curriculum and create content for future modules. To maintain student engagement in asynchronous learning, I'm very mindful when designing course activities. I want to create an authentic activity that students will be able to apply the concepts introduced in the PowerPoints. As I write the activity requirements and associated instructions, I try to be as clear and concise as possible. I think of all of the questions a student could ask and make sure that I address them in the instructions, so students can start working right away and don't have to ask for clarification and wait for my response. I also specify the amount of time an activity should take and when the assignment is due. This helps students effectively plan their schedule and make sure that they spend the proper amount of time and effort on the assignment. If a student takes an hour to partially complete an activity that I told them should only take 15 minutes, they know that something is wrong and they need to contact me for help. Another engagement strategy for asynchronous learning is to embed questions in videos and PowerPoint presentations. Some free software applications that can be used for this process is edpuzzle and nearpod. edpuzzle is currently one of my favorite technologies. This program lets you either search and select videos, including TED Talks, YouTube, and teacher-created videos, or upload your own. After selecting or uploading your video, you can add true, false, multiple choice, or short answer questions at various points throughout the content. When you've completed your questions, you can generate a link to share with your students. Once students click on that link, you can track their progress. You can also see how much of the video a student has viewed, the questions that they have answered, and when they have completed the assignment. True, false, and multiple choice questions will be scored automatically. edpuzzle also has a wonderful option that prevents students from fast forwarding through the video content just to answer the questions. Nearpod is a software application designed to enhance your slideshows. You can either create a presentation on the site or upload your existing PowerPoint or Google Slides. Then you can add traditional multiple choice, true, false, matching, or open-ended questions, as well as polls, collaboration boards, challenges, and bell ringers. This is a great way to check for understanding and highlight the important parts of the presentation, especially as the student works through the content of your PowerPoint on their own. I like the use of the collaboration board function for students to post notes for virtual exit tickets or a parking lot. The exit ticket is an informal assessment strategy where students pose a question or ask students to summarize what they've learned at the end of a lesson. The parking lot strategy is an ongoing question board where students can anonymously post questions, comments, or aha moments that they have regarding the lesson they just viewed. At the bottom of this slide, you're going to see that I provided a few links so you can experience the student view of edpuzzle and nearpod. As we've discussed, creating a sense of community among a group of asynchronous learners can be a challenge. The goal is to somehow replicate teamwork found in traditional classroom experiences so that students can experience those meaningful conversations, collaborate to problem-solve solutions, and build a depth of understanding. I find it important to assign team projects to my asynchronous groups as well as my synchronous groups. I explain to students the importance of collaboration in a global society. Even if their teammate has a different work schedule, they can still communicate information and problem solve to complete a task. Two technologies that allow my students to collaborate asynchronously are Flipgrid and Slack. Flipgrid is a video message board where students can post their video answers to teacher-posed questions and then respond to their classmates' posts. The instructor also has the option to moderate videos. So once a student submits a video, the instructor can view the submission and choose to activate it. Once that video is activated, it's released to the topic page for other students to view and comment. Slack is a messaging app that allows users to post messages in a similar format to Twitter. The creator of the challenge has the ability to manage the posting permissions. Be sure to communicate with your students your expectations and proper etiquette required for their video and text message submissions. Students do not have to sign up or create accounts on either of these sites in order to use them. You can just provide them the link. And I've provided links below so that you can see the student version of edpuzzle in Slack. I want to thank you for watching my presentation. I hope that you have found the resources and strategies that I've provided helpful as you aim to increase the engagement of students in your own virtual classrooms. Have a great day.